This is National Park Week, and I'm going to tell you some of my experiences in the national parks. My first major experience was in 1952. My folks took me out to see the Grand Canyon, Rocky Mountain National Park, Bryce. And that was my first introduction to the national parks. When I went to high school, we moved to California. And California has some of the really great national parks. Yosemite being one of them that I dated my wife in. But the one that really got me into photography was the Redwood National Park in Northern California. If you haven't gone there, this is an amazing place. When you walk through that forest, you get this ancient feeling. And what happened to me in Florida, one day I was driving up with my wife to an art show in Winter Park, and she made me stop at this little curio spot. It's called Fish Eating Creek. And I don't like those little tourist things. And he could tell that I was not very happy. So he says, we have a boardwalk in back. Now, a boardwalk, keep me out of the gators. So when I went back there and went into that cypress strand, it gave me the same feeling as the redwood forest. And I think that's one of the things that really tuned me into Florida, was going into the cypress strand. When I first started photographing the redwoods forest, it was probably in 1973, 74. And I was photographing then in color. I wasn't photographing in black and white. It was all color. It's very difficult. This is because of film. It was all film. There was no digital then. And I think it was 1975. I was in this beautiful little area of ferns and just gorgeous. I had a big old redwood tree right in front of me, and on my left, about 30 feet away, I heard a crack. I looked over, and all of a sudden, this 300-foot cypress trees. I just think Florida. And I saw this 300-foot redwood tree falling right 30 feet from me. That was quite an experience, and it was like an explosion when that thing hit the ground. It split in half. And I said, I think I've had enough photography. I survived this. I think I'll go home. So I did. And then eventually we moved to Florida in 1980. And we got involved in Florida and got in photographing Florida in color. And then in 1996, our son was killed. And I went to black and white. So I said to myself, well, I'm not leaving Florida. I'm going to continue photographing black and white in Florida. That's going to be my goal. 10 years later, in 1996, I said, I think I need to go back to the redwoods and see what happened when that tree fell. And I found the tree, and it was a whole new thing. When the tree fell, it opened a hole in the sky, and a whole new ecosystem happened. It was the most gorgeous shot, called Pepperwood. And it took me a week to get that picture. I finally got it. The problem was it was a 10-minute exposure. And when you have a 10-minute exposure, you can't have any wind. And there was a plant right in the middle of the picture that when a semi was about a half a mile away, would go down the road, the wind would come from that semi and move it. So it took 10 times to do 10-minute exposures to get the picture. But I finally got it. That was pretty exciting. And I think that's one of my favorite shots. It's called Pepperwood. I shot that with my 8x10 Deerdorf. I think it was with a 120 millimeter Nikkor lens. That's like a 100-degree angle lens. It's like a 16 millimeter on your 35. But when you shoot with a large format, because of the depth of the field, you shoot at f/45. And you have reciprocity failure. Because people in digital even don't want, I don't think it even happens in digital reciprocity. So what that happens makes the film go slower and slower. That's why you have this 10-minute exposure. And I think the light meter read 1.5 minutes. But after shooting a lot in the Redwoods, I figured out what 1.5 minutes means in reality, and it was 10 minutes. The first time that I photographed the redwood forest, I was shooting color. I was there for 2 weeks. I shot all this color film. Oh, I was having a good time. I got these great shots. I used my light meter. I read the light meter. And I got back and developed the film, and the only thing you could see was the holes where the skies came through. All the trees were just completely clear. I took a hammer and beat my light meter up. Unfortunately, it wasn't the light meter's fault. I didn't understand reciprocity failure. And that's how I discovered reciprocity. But in reciprocity, it does magic things to the film, though. It's a pain, but it does things you can't get in digital. Now, I can't tell people how they shoot in color, because color is a whole different world. But for me, when I'm researching to do another picture, I always have my camera. You never not take your camera. Something may happen and may never ever happen again in your lifetime. So you never do research without a camera. That's why people say, oh, do you do research? Yeah, but I'm there with the camera. So if it happens, I am taking that picture. I'm not going to wait around until next year where it doesn't happen. That's certain things that I've learned from the past. I know one shot I had all fixed up, going to go back, and the tree fell. So you take the camera with you every time you go for research. You don't go without your camera. Now, people with a digital camera, there's no reason not to take a digital camera. Now, with an 8x10 with 65 pounds, it's a little different, but still you have to do it. One of the parks that there's two kinds of redwood trees. There's the coastal redwood trees. There's the mountain trees. The mountain trees are up about 6,000 to 8,000 feet. They have very little undergrowth compared to the coastal redwood trees. They're whole different trees. The mountain ones are fatter and shorter, and the coastal ones are skinnier and taller. So Sequoia National Park is one of these places where you find the big old, I guess they call the general, the largest living thing in the world or something like that. Well, there's other things that California thinks they have the largest, but I've seen other bigger trees. Anyhow, we were doing a trip. It was for the National Park book. I was wanting to do a book on the national parks, which we completed a few years back. And Sequoia was one of those I wanted to go and see. And it just didn't have, I was used to the coastal redwoods. We have all these ferns and it's just beautiful, undergrowth. And Sequoia's a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's just dirt basically, some leaves on the ground. Some ferns, but not much. So we would wander around for a couple of days, and we're at 8,000 feet. The campground is at 8,000 feet. And when we went there, we had a tent trailer, but it was too early. This is in January. I think it was in January or February. I think it was February. The park wasn't open for camping. They had the little houses to rent. I don't think they had heat in them either. It was really cold. So I was really exhausted and tired, but of course Nikki's out with her little Canon digital camera out taking pictures. She comes and says, "Now you got to come take a picture of this plant." And I said, "Oh, I'm tired. I don't do plants. I do trees." "No, you've got to do this for me." So I said, "Okay." So I took the 8x10 Durograph out there, and I used a 420 millimeter lens. Now, when you do that, the lens that long, you do a fairly close up, the focal length it's way out there. So what happens is your exposure gets longer. And when you're composing, see, when I'm composing a landscape, I use wide angle, and I see the scene, I set the tripod out and take the picture. But this, I had to compose an image. I'm not used to composing close-ups upside down and backwards. And so eventually, after a lot of frustration, I think I finally got the composition I wanted. And again, the exposure this time, I'm not sure it was 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It was a long exposure. Because I had to use I think I used f-stop 128. Most people don't even have 128. And it had water on it. It's just, the whole thing was just gorgeous. So it's one of my few close-ups I've done that I kind of like. I don't do close-ups, do much close-ups, but that was a fun one. Now, if you really want to get involved and see some of the national parks, my book is available online. There's a little link down below, or you can go to the website, clydebutcher.com. And the National Park book is really, I think it gives, I'm not sure how many parks, but all the way from Alaska to California to Maine to Florida to, you know, I mean, it's a pretty good sampling of the national parks around the country. It's not all of them. I'd like to do all of them someday, but maybe tomorrow we'll tell you a different story. Okay.